those are really good takeaways. Like self-work is going to help you.
And you can't
and,
do it yourself, right? You
and get,
can't. I think that's the
yeah,
beauty of it
yeah, lean
is
on somebody.
I'm blind to myself. I have
Yeah.
to see the my mirror essentially is the way I look at it. But if somebody's triggering me, that's a mirror. But also a coach, a safe place can also just help me see that. As sons of God, men have so much capacity for good, joy, and happiness, but far too often they're depressed, disconnected, and unfulfilled. Man Talk for Latter-day Saints is dedicated to creating conversations with Latter-day Saint men about the things that are critical to men becoming their best selves, including spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being. Men need other men to help them become healthy, grounded, confident men. And our intent is to help Latter-day Saint men become the men God has created us to be. Hi, and welcome to Man Talk for Latter-day Saints. I'm Matt Allred. I'm on the board of One Heart, One Light, a nonprofit organization that teaches skills to help people with a Latter-day Saint background to process their emotions in healthy ways, rewrite limiting beliefs, and access the power of Christ's atonement in real time.
Hello, everyone. This is Bob Smith with Bob Smith Coaching. I am the LDS Men's life coach, and I help men, LDS men specifically, drop all the shoulds, the stress, the anxiety, the worry, and start creating total freedom and fulfillment in your life.
I'm Dan Chambers, the owner of Unlimited Soul Coaching. I help high-performing men and women shift from excellence to essence.
Great. Thank you. Today we have an invitation to LDS Men, and specifically we're responding to the podcast that Greg Mattson and Kurt Frankham did on the Quick Show recently. They had a great, valuable discussion, a lot of wonderful suggestions, ideas. But today I really want to talk to you, the one. You are the man sitting in Elders Quorum who's unhappy, disconnected, depressed, anxious. I've been there. I know exactly what it's like. You cannot afford for your elders cannot afford to wait for your elders quorum, your bishop, or anyone else for that matter to wake up and begin to serve your needs. You, as an agent, need to act. Take the initiative. Don't wait for someone else to go with you. Take a leap of faith, and you will quickly see that you are not alone. I have with me three men, and we have all been where you are. And we are each going to share a bit of our story as we start out. There are all kinds of people who are becoming more conscious and resources that are becoming available. And I believe this is all part of the Lord's plan, and the time to act is now. So a few years ago, I was the one that was disconnected, anxious. I was living in my mind perfectionistically. I was trying to do everything so perfect, assuming that the Lord was going to solve all my problems, take away my anxiety, but I had zero friends. I wasn't connecting well with my wife or anyone else. And it was in that moment of darkness, really, that I reached out to a brother, started doing some coaching. Within a few months, I was going to a retreat, and I woke up. I woke up to brotherhood and connection.
So good. Hey, everyone, this is Bob Smith. So I spent decades of my life doing all the things that I thought I should do, getting baptized when I was supposed to, getting the priesthood when I was supposed to, going on a mission when I was supposed to, getting married in the temple when I was supposed to, doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do, all the shoulds, and thinking that that would provide the happiness and fulfillment that I wanted to have. And I felt empty inside all along the way. I had a shield of perfectionism that was over top of me for so many years because I believed that's how I would get my needs met and be loved and accepted. When now looking back, all it was a shield that stopped me from actually connecting at real, genuinely deep levels with the brothers in my elders quorum, the people at church, my wife, my kids, and whoever else it might be. So it was through a really challenging divorce that I started doing a lot of introspective work, a lot of counseling, which I went to reluctantly at first and then really leaned into to really say, how can I change myself? How can I be become a better version of me. And in going through that process and going deep in that process, that's when I discovered that some of the things need to change. And then going through the divorce process, I virtually lost everything that I had worked my life for, like my entire life as I knew it. I basically burned down to the ashes. And then it was my opportunity to either fall apart in that moment or to decide, without anything much left in my life from what it was, from what it looked like before, now I get to decide what is it exactly that I want in my life. And that was the big turning factor for me. What is it that I actually want to have be a part of my life? And that's when my heart started to really get engaged, back in life, back in the process, and led me to where I am now.
Yeah, Bob, you're a phoenix, bro. That's what I hear. Um, I'm Dan Chambers. My path in this shift into I really think of it as kind of having my energy and attention turned back towards myself meaningfully, purposefully, and really with aliveness returning came when I owned a business. I owned a business that I'd been a part of for 15 years, became the owner, and in the midst of ownership in that business, probably I was around in that window, began to feel a lot of discontent, began to see myself attached less to things. And in the turmoil of that moment, really, I would say, found the call of my soul begin to really call after me. And that led me to choose coaching. Actually, I found a coach. And then I was introduced to this, just the idea of doing this work. And I wouldn't call it on myself, but doing work with myself is probably a better description, in which I began to see myself, know myself, understand myself. And in that sweetness, I found kind of a new path. And eventually that led to me selling that business and choosing to center my life around continuing my own journey fundamentally, but then helping others do the same.
Great. Thank you. Let's go ahead and dive in. A lot of content in those podcasts. And like you were saying, Bob, that really kind of animated you. I just felt myself, getting so excited. Like, we need to be in this conversation. We need to be talking with our brothers. We need to be, I just wanted to dive in immediately. So thank you for being here. One of the questions I wanted to start with is why do men fail to connect? What did you fail to connect prior to kind of coming to this point?
I think it's because I didn't know what connection really was. I thought connection was me doing all the right steps. I was elders quorum president multiple times. I served as a seminary teacher. I was a youth teacher. I served in the young men's presidencies multiple times, scoutmaster. So I've done everything there. So I thought that connection and happiness was going to come by all the to-dos. I probably listened to more conference talks than I would say probably 99% of the membership of the church. I've gone through like over and over to where I just, brought that in and all these things. So a lot of really good things, but I thought that that's where it was, but it wasn't until I had those moments where I was brought to literally my knees of humility, of just feeling that sense of emptiness and being worn out, because all these things, all the doing wasn't producing the happy. It just felt like I was just a shell. And it's almost like it took me getting to that breaking point of exhaustion where where it's like I had to turn to get some help, to get a counselor, to get a coach, and then start looking inward and start reconnecting my head with my heart again. It's almost like it's almost like there was a plate between my head and my heart, to where I didn't have that feeling. My heart was not alive in the process, even though I did, dozens and dozens of elders quorum moves, and we did all these other things. And yes, there were moments where I felt very spiritually uplifted and really positive and had some really great, experiences that way. But just on a consistent basis, I was not connected to myself, and I didn't realize that I wasn't, but I truly wasn't. And therefore I really couldn't be connected to other people in a really meaningful way either. So I think it really took me kind of getting to that breaking point. And I guess that's what my message to the men out there is, you guys, it's not going to take a divorce. It doesn't have to take a divorce. It doesn't have to take a midlife crisis. It doesn't have to take, chronic fatigue or getting some other, sickness or, issue that way to really wake up and start, feeling again, start becoming the person that you want to become, to start really leaning into your desires and what you really want in your life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, I really appreciate what you noticed. I mean, thematically speaking, as I think about this concept, and you said it so perfectly, how do you really connect to others if within you're not connected? And I think that's what a lot of men, really, that's the struggle. Because you're in an elders quorum, there's opportunity for connection, real and actually real authentic connection. It's available right there, or in your marriage, or among friends from other places. It's not that connection isn't available. It's that inside of us, we have a disconnection, and it's coming in a way. Bob, because I make up that part of your story is you weren't permanently disconnected all the time, but the root of a deeper connection finally, in a way, like came to the surface, and then you had this experience that, for you led to certain things, but here you are in a new beautiful path, teaching others about it. So sometimes our problems really are our paths, but I just really resonate with this idea of and maybe that's what we can discuss. So how does that really happen? Right? Because you can go to coaching, you can go to therapy, you can go to retreats, which facilitate it, but it doesn't make it happen.
True.
So what's this journey in which we find that sweet connection within? I would love thoughts.
So I've got a thought that I do think, and I'm trying to remember. I think the author is Richard Rohr. He's written a book about finding peace in the second half of life. I don't know if you've visited that, but he, Bobby said you don't have to go through a divorce or a midlife crisis, and yet he kind of speaks to that men do go through that you're going to encounter this point at which what he says is the first half of your life, you're trying to prove yourself to the world. And then that breaks down and it's like, hey, this sucks. I'm not climbing that wall anymore. And the second half of life, the question becomes, what does my soul demand of me? How can I be more authentically me? And so I think in some ways, every man's going to break down, and that's okay. I think it's part of the journey. It's part of growing and waking up to, oh my gosh, there's so much more to me than just making $1. There's so much more to me than what I thought I needed to do to please the world. And so for me, it was a different kind of crisis, but in many ways it felt like the darkest time of my life. I just felt like I was struggling. My business was struggling. I was just like, oh Lord, where art thou? Right. It's kind of like Joseph Smith in the jail going, what is going on? So I think there is an element of that. And back to your point, Dan, about, connection's always there. Am I willing to receive it? And I just wasn't. I thought, it's like I just couldn't connect. And it was because I was so broken inside. I so much shame, so much self-judgment, so much self-rejection that until I, look like this or whatever it was, I can't allow myself to be known. It was back to shame, like we've talked about before.
I think, gosh, that is, I think you're spot on with that. I think it's really the shame, the self-judgment. I think that is really the blockade that stops progress. It feels like it's keeping us safe, and all it is stopping our progress from being able to move forward. Meaning like, and when I say shame, almost like if I let someone in too close to let them know who I really am and what I'm really about, and that I'm worried about these thoughts and feelings that I'm having on the inside. And if those come out, and if someone like finds out at an elders quorum, or if the bishop finds out what I really think or how I really feel, then I'm not going to be good enough, or that I'm not okay, and I'm not going to be loved just as I am. And now I know that, just not to be the case. But it really took, to Dan's point as well, it's almost like it takes problems in our life to kind of, encourage us, if you will, forward. There's a quote that Wayne Dyer says that maybe this will resonate with some of the people out there. He says, "Life will either teach us with the tickle of the feather or the whump of the hammer." And so it's either, are we listening to the ticklings as it goes along, like, this doesn't seem quite right, or this doesn't seem quite right, or does it take the whump of the hammer at some point to say, okay, big time wake up call, you guys, here it is, right? Because when I look back now, I'm like, oh, that was the tickling of the feather. I had so much self-judgment, meaning like I have the priesthood, I've been on a mission, we got married in the temple, I read the scriptures regularly, we attend the temple, we listen to conference, we have callings in the church, we have these kids, we're doing all the things that a Mormon man family should be doing. And I'm not feeling, fulfilled and happy in my life, but I feel like I should be feeling happy and fulfilled. And I also don't want to tell anybody that I'm not feeling happy and fulfilled. I'm going to put on my church face and do my calling and show up and do all the things and find, some level of fulfillment in all the things I'm doing, but not really feeling like alive inside. And I also don't want to let anyone know that I'm not, nor do I want to get any help, because I believe that getting help with that means that I must be failing in some way. But this is one thing: when I was Elders Quorum present and my marriage was, about to end, that was one thing that I had brought up in that lesson, that I guess impacted several people was, would you guys hesitate for 1 second? So this is perfect since we're in the middle of this summer that we're experiencing. I said, would you guys even hesitate for even 1 second to call an air conditioning guy to come over and fix your air conditioner if it goes out? Like, would you be embarrassed that you don't know how to fix your air conditioner if your air conditioner were to go out in the middle of the summer? I'm like, I'd be willing to bet that not one of you guys would feel embarrassed about calling them, dropping, a couple of $1,000s to make sure that your air conditioner is running, so that then you guys can continue to enjoy an air conditioned home. And there'd be no judgment about that. So why would we even begin to believe that we know how to fix all of the relational problems, which can be very complex, and try to unwind any of the beliefs that we might be holding on to, that we don't even recognize that we're holding on to, that are stopping us from really opening ourselves up for connection to our wives, to our kids, to other men, to, other opportunities that could really be there that will help us to become the people that we're really meant to become.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
So I do want to see if we could talk a little bit about safety, because I think that's one of the, some of the things that they brought up, rather, not broke up, safety, permission. And part of what I heard was, men need to be given permission. And the more I think about that, the more we need to support each other in giving ourselves permission. And I say support each other because it's like I was looking for somebody to give me permission, but I didn't realize I have to give myself permission. And so I think coming together as men and helping others feel safe. Hey, it's okay that you're having a breakdown. Hey, it's okay that your marriage is falling apart. Or in other words, you're okay. You are still, I don't need to judge you. We're not, it's all good. And I can love and support you in that. So anyway, I just wanted to try to pull some of these other pieces in and see if we can kind of tie it all together a little bit.
I would just resonating with a couple of things Bob said, and maybe we can link it to this idea, but it feels like if I were to simplify at some level, what I heard you express, which we can all relate to, is it's like there's some beginning in which you see that there's something to let go of, like a belief that, wait a sec, maybe that's not true. That my value's on the line if this, or if I express vulnerability, that's bad, right? It feels like the beginning of this journey has some experience with which, kind of back to the safety idea, that safety, what is real safety? And you begin to learn that actually it's being revealed. It's actually being expressed. That suddenly, it's weird. It's like that's safer than trying to hold it all in and act like it's not there. That this becomes volatile, right? This becomes extremely dangerous because essentially it's going to come out, and it's not going to come out in pretty ways. And so we might damage relationships. We might ruin a job. We might, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of this shift in which we have to let go. And part of what we have to let go of is to be seen, to be revealed. And so I don't know, does that resonate with you guys? Because that's kind of what I feel like, a little bit what you were talking about, Bob, in some ways, but maybe you could clarify.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it almost feels, I think it's almost like counterintuitive, or at least when in my growing up years. So I grew up as the golden child, and my sister was the black sheep. And what I've discovered that came from that is that we both came out of there with wounds that need to be healed. And they're slightly different flavors of wounds. I actually talked to my sister just a couple of days ago, and she said even though she was treated so harshly, like the words that my mom used, how emotionally abusive she was, how physically abusive she was to her, like my sister said that she thinks it was actually worse for me in that scenario than it was for her, because it's easier to see kind of the discord and the disconnect and the problems that existed in that relationship than it was for me, because the way my young brain translated all the chaos that was going on was, oh, I don't want to be the black sheep, and I need to continue to hold on to this shield of perfectionism so that I can be loved and accepted. Because if I step one foot outside of, doing the right, or being exactly perfect as I think my mom, wants me to be, then all of a sudden I'm going to be outside of the fold and outside of, their love and acceptance. So it was very conditional. It was very conditional on, are you, acting in the way that I need you to act, or do you seem kind of out of control to me, and then we need to get you back in line. And so the more I've thought about it, the more I've come to realize I think it was a worse scenario actually for me, even though it seemed like my sister was treated so horribly, which she was, and she has her own things to deal with. But then what that made my brain say, like the belief I had was, I can't be seen, like you said, I can't reveal myself if I am to be loved. I have to be perfect. I have to be the person I think this person wants me to be, whatever that means in my mind. And therefore I can't really be open and genuinely me, or share really truly what's open and genuine that's going on inside of me. So there was just so much judgment, so much shame, so much like, I can't do this. And it all came from the belief, like, if I let this out, that's totally unsafe for me to do so. Right. Just
Totally.
kind of back to your point.
Yeah, so much of that is my story too, Bob. Just trying to live perfectly. I have my older brother was a little more of the rebel, and hey, he's gonna go party, and in my brain it was like, hey, I'm just gonna do everything perfect. I'm gonna be the golden child, and I'm gonna do everything right, and not really understanding that in doing so, I feel like I lost my soul. And it wasn't until my 40s that I started doing this work and kind of becoming conscious that, oh my gosh, I have given myself away to try to please everybody to the point that I don't know who I am. In fact, I exaggerated a little bit, but I told a friend of mine, it's like I don't even know what kind of ice cream I like, because I'm so used to trying to appease everybody else and making sure they're happy, that I don't know how to stand up for my own desires. I don't even know how to ask for what I want, or know what I want. And
Okay,
so
Matt, what's your favorite ice cream?
nowadays it's mint chocolate chip.
Oh man.
Well,
you,
well
Speak the
played.
truth, brother.
you either
Preach
got to
it.
love it or hate it, right? My wife hates it. So does her family, but I'm like,
More for you.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
Matt, like, I love that, man. I love that. Isn't that so true? Because that came from, there must have been a belief installed at some point in your young brain before our brains had the ability to filter out, hey, this isn't really true, or this, I don't really have to accept that belief that I'm getting from my parents, right? Before we even have the ability to even go through that process, our young brains kind of accept these things as like, oh, I must do this so that then I can have my needs met, and so that I can be okay and feel safe. So, I mean, really back to your point of safety, it's almost like that's what, communicate to our young brains. This operating or showing up in this way is creating safety. And that's the thing that we got to break down, to Dan's point, to say, no, safety is actually the opposite of that. It's really leaning into your vulnerability and saying, hey, I'm sad, or hey, even this one, this is a good one for our LDS men's, community, is, hey, I do love having sex, and I am a sexual person, and I am a sexual being, because nice guys don't desire sex. I mean, don't you dare think
They
about
don't
her,
admit
about a
it.
woman that
They don't
way.
admit it.
Don't admit it. We'll just go behind the scenes, like the guy said on the podcast, and look at pornography because we feel all stuck inside and we don't have an outlet for that. And maybe our wives, we can talk them into it every now and again or whatever. But so much of what you said resonated, Matt. Like, who am I anymore? Like I've done so much to try to say, how do I please this person, or what do you want, or how can I show up for you? And then you completely lose yourself in the process, because it doesn't come back to that point, or the like what I mentioned earlier in my story, which was, it's almost like when everything you have is like taken away and it's like fresh slate.
Sure.
It was super painful to go through and like super scary, and I felt completely vulnerable, but it's like I didn't have anywhere else to go but up. And so I'm like, I don't have anything else in my life. I can either go down road number one, which is, go to the strip clubs and get drunk or whatever, and take that path, or I can start deciding, what is it that I want in my life? How do I want to rebuild this thing?
Sure.
Now that everything's kind of taken away and this building has been leveled, what is the building that I actually want to start building now? What are the pieces that I want to have be part of it? And that's when you start to really reconnect with yourself, I believe, is, what do I want my life to look like? What's truly meaningful to me? And how do I want, what are the pieces and elements that are important to me? Not just, I'm going to take my wife out on the once a week date.
Yeah.
Like, do you actually want to take her out on a once a week date, or do you not? Like, how about you break the mold? How about we challenge the mold and decide, is this, working for us? Is it not? And is that really what you want? Is it not? And if not, what would be, next steps from that?
Beautiful.
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on all that?
I mean, I guess again, what I think about, if we're trying to talk to the one today, Matt, and the one that's sitting there, the one that's wondering, the one that feels some of these things. And so, because what I hear you saying, Bob, a little bit there is like, within this willingness to, let's say, be revealed, if we want to say that, this coming into this idea that there might be, would you be willing to believe even that there might be safety and love by the choice to be revealed? We're not talking about start with here's everything, right? Like, but actually begin to believe that thought, because that's a small thing that anyone can do. But I feel like for me, that's kind of where a lot of it gained momentum, was when I began to believe. And so I think this journey includes, and so when I think of that idea, I always think of the interaction with the Savior. Well, do you believe? Well, I believe, but help my unbelief. So part of that vulnerability and belief simultaneously is, I think, really at the heart of some of this shift, where you realize you can believe and be vulnerable. So you're kind of like, let me move forward, believing that maybe it could be safe to be revealed, and that I might feel better than I felt in years if I actually said what I felt and revealed what I was experiencing, and then let that almost be a line upon line journey. And so I guess I say that because I think the Savior's at the heart of this too.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I could not have done what I did without his help, without the power of his help. So it's also this opportunity to recognize maybe we haven't relied upon Christ and understood his atonement and how it works in our lives too. So
that's beautiful. Couple things come to mind, as we're talking about safety, and one is just, I think we're probably and I'm speaking collectively as men, even though the listeners, we're at different levels of comfort as far as being vulnerable. So my invitation to those who aren't really ready to go there is find somebody who can kind of show you the way, be it a coach, be it a retreat, be it somebody who can start to help you walk that path. Because I do think that as men, we were talking about your childhood, Bob, and just the, safety and obviously me losing myself. I think as men, here's an opportunity to create safety for other men. And that's where, honestly, it really changed my life to have other men be vulnerable with me, invite me into vulnerability. And I think I may be misquoting, but I've just heard it said, vulnerability begets vulnerability, that by being vulnerable, I bring down the walls and I let them know, hey, it's safe. You're not going to lose your man card. And I really kind of hate that saying about losing man card, because to me, it's a kind of a toxic saying. You don't lose your man card. You're okay. And you're going to be safe with your brother. So we get to create that. The other thing that kind of popped into my mind as we were talking is the idea of the moat and the beam. And, Jesus talks about how the moat really doesn't have a heavy significance, right? It's like, why are you even paying attention to that when you've got this beam in your own eye? And what kind of struck with me was the beam is structural. I've built my ego. I've built my sense of self. I've built my false sense of who I think I am on this beam. And Jesus said, yeah, get rid of it. Pull it out. And you're talking about, Bob, rising up from the ashes. You really had to let go of ego. You had to let go of, so much of that and say, okay, let me start over. I do think that's part of each of our journey. It's going to look different, but how can we love and support each other in the process of getting rid of the false self that's built on this beam that Jesus said, yeah, you need to cast that out or you won't see clearly. And you're going to keep judging people wrongly until you get rid of it. And
yeah, I like how you use the beam in like a structural sense. I think it's well said. Dan, what were you going to say?
The thing that I can appreciate though about what your moment, Bob, if we look at, is you didn't have to do what you did. You chose to. And that's worth maybe even giving a little bit of attention to relative to this conversation, because you could have made another choice. You could have said, hey, everything's lost. Screw it. And away I go, to wherever temporarily felt good, right? But you didn't. So why? I would love to hear you speak to. What called you? Because I think masculinity has a call. The divine masculine is calling. So I wonder if you feel like that moment. Tell us what are your thoughts about that? Why you chose what you chose?
Well, just to be real vulnerable here, like when you say that it was a legitimate choice, like I kid you guys not, I was legitimately in the car deciding, do I go down to the strip clubs and just get drunk and honestly take that path and just say, forget all of this, or use even a stronger, word than that, that isn't normally in the LDS culture, like forget all of this and, whatever, like who cares? Like I've lost all of this. And I think the only reason I didn't, or maybe a big part of the reason, is because I had years of meeting with a counselor at that point. So, I'm a coach and I've had, lots of coaches. I still have my own coach, now today, but I had that person that I had met with for years. Again, I went into that whole discussion reluctantly, even though my ex-wife, or my wife at the time, now ex-wife, at that time, she was like, let's get into counseling. And her idea was, let's get into counseling to get Bob fixed so that then we can, have a good life or whatever. So if we can just get him fixed, then, then we're going to be fixed. And then what happened is I started getting fixed and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I think it was honestly by going there and start looking at this as like, oh my gosh, I really want to improve. And then me being completely honest, exposed, vulnerable over and over and over, just like going to the gym and lifting weights and having that be a muscle that gets strengthened over and over and over again. I think by going through the process of being vulnerable and being vulnerable and being vulnerable, and having someone that can hear it from me over and over again, even my deepest, darkest secrets that I feel like I would die if they got out, if someone knew what I was thinking about, her, or about something I did, or maybe something I did do in my past, and bringing up all the stuff that I wouldn't want anyone to know happened, like being able to go to that place and still being okay after having shared that, even though I thought I was going to die in the sharing of it. And so I think it was after years of going through that process, it's almost like then it gave me the option. I think had I stayed stuck in, like, I'm not going to look inside, I'm not going to be vulnerable, I'm not going to do that, but I think just based on the work and the foundation I had built at that point, I think that was the thing that actually gave me that other option, like the door number two, to be able to go see that. I'm not sure I would have seen door number two otherwise. I think I still would have been stuck and not seen the other option as clearly as I did. And I think I probably would have gone to door number one, which honestly, I think that's why so many times we choose that door number one, because it doesn't seem like we even have that other option to begin with. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm hearing you right, and this is what I'm gathering from that is maybe it's something to share and you can clarify it. But it's like you had the choice really was the choice to be vulnerable in a counseling environment. But you not only chose it once, you had chosen it numerous times. So
Over a period of years.
vulnerability, yeah. So vulnerability had become almost, there was enough practice in that choice that you had an ability to choose a different way. And that feels really true to me. I mean, there's a lot of men who they have no practice in vulnerability. They've learned, they think because that's not being a man or whatever that is, right? So much of that is really turned off. And so it really feels like door number one, there's no other door.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that feels valuable to me.
Yeah.
That's
Because
beautiful.
then the only answer is not being, because it's really about authenticity. I think it's really about congruence and authenticity. It's like, am I really going to be who I want to be? Do I even know who I want to be? Do I know any part of what's truly inside of me, or do I not? And I think the more we get to know ourselves and the more we truly get comfortable with who we really are, and can even sit with the thoughts and the feelings that we maybe don't even particularly like, or maybe that we would judge as being wrong or bad or whatever it might be. I think the more that we can be vulnerable and open to that, this is all part of our human experience, and the normal part of being a man and being here, and of course some of these things are going to come up for us in this process. I think that just makes us way stronger, because I think that really is the essence of masculinity. I think that's actually what's really attractive to not just women like our wives, but our kids and really anyone around us, is how comfortable can you be just being you, like being authentically you,
Sure.
without shame, without justification, and just showing up as, you know what, when I did this, that really sucked and I didn't do a very good job of that, and I'm going to do better next time because I want to, because I see that for what it is, and I think that's that's one area I want to change. Or, you know what, I see how this went, and I'm totally happy with the way that went, and I'm going to own that fully, and I can totally move forward with that as well. So I think that is truly the essence of masculinity, is being open to, yeah, really the authentic us. And it's really the shame that really stops that, by saying, I'm not okay just as I am. There's no
Yeah.
way that I could be okay just as I am.
Beautiful. Dan, Bob, thank you for just being so vulnerable to share that part of your story, because that, in my judgment, that's not easy to share. And yet I think if I walked your path, I would have had the exact same struggle, right? I can't look at you and say, oh, you were tempted. I would have been tempted the same way if I was in your shoes. And I kind of, what I hear you saying is that vulnerability, the work you had done in self-discovery had given you enough consciousness to liberate your agency, is what I want to say, because it's like, oh my gosh, now I can see the two paths. If I had not done this work, if I had not looked inside, if I had not braved the fear of just looking at my stuff, I would not have a choice. But now that I have this choice, because I've woke up, I'm conscious of these options. Now here's my agency. I can choose. Do I want the fruits of the strip club, or do I want the fruits of the covenants I've made? Well, now I can make that decision. But
Yeah.
I don't think what you're describing to me is that had you not walked that path, you wouldn't have
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah. Because if it's too scary to go to that really vulnerable place, then the only option that we have is to numb out with either doing more, like let me go be Mr. Elder's Quorum present guy and go visit everybody in the ward every single week and pretend like that's going to be the thing that fills me up
Sure.
and causes me like almost like over like outworking the insufficiency that I feel inside. Like if I can just work enough and just put myself to the point of exhaustion, which I have done, you know, so for so many years of my life, then I won't feel so insufficient and bad about myself. Or when we get so burnt out, that's when it's like pornography or strip clubs or what any of those other things, TV, movies. Like I would buffer on all that stuff as well. That's when it has to go to that place, either to where it's kind of like, let me just go to a numb place so that at least I don't have to feel like the weight of responsibility or whatever else is there. But really what it is going back into that vulnerable place. It's like once we can open up that, it's almost like opening up a prison door that's holding us captive. It's like we're sitting here holding the key to that door, and if we're willing to go unlock the door, it can open up the whole rest of our life for us. But it just feels really freaking scary to go unlock that door and go there. But once you do, and you start unlocking that door and you go unlock it, more often, you just get better at doing it. And that's why, yeah, I would totally recommend a good counselor, a good coach, somebody that you can just share. I mean, and that's really what I try to be for the people, my clients, is let's start with just being a totally safe space where whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, there's absolutely zero judgment. I'm not saying even good judgment or bad, either one. This is a zero judgment space, truly. Let's just see what's there for you and hold it up as just objective information that then we can work through and sort through and then decide what do we do with this from here. That's when we can really go to that place that then opens up everything else for the rest of our life.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I just highlight from this beautiful conversation we're having that I really like the summation of kind of self-work liberates agency. Those are your words, Matt. But I think if you're looking for something like, well, what do I do? Self-work, it liberates agency. So part of that's vulnerability, but also self-work, if you've experienced, Bob and Matt and me, like it involved other people. You don't have to do this yourself. So, and you just were saying that a counselor, a coach, something. So I think if you're in this moment, those are really good takeaways. Like self-work is going to help you.
And you can't do it yourself, right? You
and
can't. I think that's the beauty of it is,
lean on somebody.
I'm blind to myself. I have to see my mirror essentially is the way I look at it. But if somebody's triggering me, that's a mirror. But also a coach, a safe place can also just help me see that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So we're about out of time. I wanted to just bring up one thing, and maybe we can visit this another time. There was a lot of discussion in that podcast about, hey, men need, a challenge, and they need an adventure, and they need, a battle
and an adventure and a
beauty to love, right?
And a beauty to love.
My only concern with some of the talk about, getting out and going fishing, getting out and hiking, is that those can be numbing if I'm not willing to do the self-work, if I'm not willing to really dig inside. Ether 12:27, if men come unto me, I will show them their weakness. You have to go into that, or the fly fishing can be just another numbing, another thing that you're using to numb instead of, porn, or in addition to, or, whatever. You have to go into that. And like, you love the way you captured that, Dan, that will free up agency. So as we wrap up, what invitation would each of you give to your brothers that are listening?
Gosh, I would just say, I want the brothers, whoever's listening to this, my my ultimate desire for them, for you, is to become alive in your life. Like, it's time to wake up. You don't have to go through as difficult of a process as I went through in that divorce process to have that awakening experience and to come alive. Like, I want the men to wake up and to come alive and to start having desires again, to start figuring out what it is that you want in your life. What do you want to create? What changes would you want to make right now, today, in your marriage, in with your kids, with whatever you want to pursue as like as a higher purpose, as a passion. But the opportunity to come alive and to really lean into life, to feel that level of energy and fulfillment, it is totally available to all of you.
And I'm just going to repeat, to me, the thought, and it's resonating with me, that this self-work liberates agency. So find your path for that, because that doesn't mean it has to be, find your path for that, because that, I feel like that has been so true for me and continues to be to this very moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. I think my invitation is much the same. Lean into the discomfort of seeing your weakness, and tell the Lord in prayer, I'm willing to see my weakness. Will you show it to me? And then lean into that, step into it. Go find a coach, go to a retreat, sign up for something that can start to teach you, if you can't find it elsewhere, to see that weakness, and you'll be on your journey. So until next time, thank you for listening to Man Talk for Latter-day Saints. Please keep listening and subscribe to be notified of new content. At Man Talk, we are talking about the things that matter and that make a difference in the lives of men. If there's something you want us to talk about, please let us know.